Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, our guest is Dave Doherty. He's an FCC Consulting Engineer with information about lots of things like translator applications, move-ups, move-ins, where you can put stuff, where you can upgrade, and information on that NCE filing window in 2021. It's all coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel. Online at nautel.com/webinars. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower, that one right over there. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. I'm in the Nashville Telos Alliance studio today of This Week in Radio Tech. I really appreciate my employer, Telos, giving me an hour or two sometimes off from work on Thursdays. And thanks a lot for filling my studio with lots of really cool Telos Alliance equipment, gear, audio stuff, and intercom. And I can connect to the whole world this way through the Telos Alliance gear. Thanks a lot, Telos Alliance at telosalliance.com. And it's a typical day, after we're done with daylight saving time and the sun is going down an hour sooner, or at least our clocks say the sun's going down an hour sooner. And so it's getting dark outside here in Nashville. It was a pleasant day here. And let's check in with Chris Tobin because he's got a weather report from wherever he is in Manhattan. Hey, Chris, welcome in.
Thank you, Kirk. Yeah, today is the sun has set. It's the blue hour for those of you who are photography nuts. It's a blue hint in the sky, and the weather's really nice, actually. So I'm just out here in my friend's balcony and enjoying the climate. Very nice, warm weather. It's really good. So that's what you have. Skyline behind me. Well, buildings, that is.
What are your, if you want to eat out this evening, what are your options? Are you guys still fairly closed down? Some things opening up? What's the deal?
No, there's plenty of outdoor dining if you're willing to weather the elements. It's not a problem. They're all enclosed, wooden little huts, if you will, with plastic covers. It's basically an enclosure with only one side open. So it's sort of the same as indoor dining, but with one wall missing. I'm not sure what to make of it.
Have you been doing a lot more cooking at home in the last few months?
Well, I do a lot of cooking at home already, so I've added to that, but it's fine. But yeah, the indoor dining thing I'm not doing because you got to sign a document, get your temperature taken, and I'm like, where's the document go? Well, we just keep it on the clipboard. Oh, really? No. Don't need to put my personal information on the clipboard at a restaurant that I have no idea what you're doing with it. It's not happening.
We've been doing a lot more cooking here at our house. And my wife has been doing cooking classes, and she's also a leader representative of a brand called Epicure. And she did a cooking show with our friend Andrew Zarian's wife, Jessica Zarian. They did a cooking show a long distance together. We had a technical difficulty or two. We're not going to use Facebook's ability to put two people together on video. We're going to do something else, maybe StreamYard. I said, hey, Andrew, you should help us out. But anyway, so yeah, cooking's become a thing. And I tell you what, I've been eating well. I think Andrew has too, with my wife and his wife both doing cooking and showing people how to make stuff. It's been really good. I've been eating really well, actually.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, hey, let's go ahead and bring our guest in. Then we're going to talk about the Nautel thing because the next one is just as cool as any of them have ever been. Our guest today, I want to welcome in from somewhere around Oregon, Portland maybe, Dave Doherty. Dave, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech.
Hi, Kirk. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. And are you in Portland proper?
Yes, I'm in Northeast Portland. We have an apartment from which I can see downtown about less than a mile away.
Oh, okay.
We've been really enjoying living here. We've been here since July. We moved in from Massachusetts at the time, and we love the place. We really do.
I lived in Portland 59 years ago, but I wasn't born yet. So I was in very cramped quarters.
I got that in an email.
Yeah. So, and actually, I've done an SBE meeting or two in Portland, and really enjoyed my trip back there. So, and one of our good friends. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a good SBE group here. Very active.
Ah, good deal. Good. Hey, Chris Tobin, we got to talk real quick about Nautel and what they are doing. Transmission Talk Tuesdays continues into November. This has been a really worthwhile thing. I'm so glad Nautel has been doing this. And this Tuesday, Chris, the title of the roundtable discussion is "It's Broke, Now What?" And I'll set this up a little bit, Chris, because you may have experienced the same thing. I don't know. You're so fastidious about reading the manual. Maybe this has never happened to you. But your shiny new Wonder Box has been sitting in place for a while now. It's been doing what it was built to do, whatever that might be, until it doesn't or it isn't doing it. And you realize that since you put it in, you haven't had to mess with it at all. There hasn't been any time to read the manual past getting it on the air for the first few days it was there. You have no idea what that red light means, where to turn. Well, this session will talk about some general troubleshooting tips, whether transmitter or audio processor or something else in the air chain, as well as provide some resources for finding thoughts and ideas fast, because none of us has any time to sit around listening to music when there are so many other things that need to get done. Guests are going to be Adam Middlecoop and Shane Toven, two very knowledgeable guys. And Chris, this has happened to me. I've got a number of pieces of equipment I've put in the last 2-3 years that have just sat there and worked, but I don't know much about them. I don't know their characteristics. Does this ever happen to you?
I've had it happen, yeah. I've learned from those lessons. Any new gear I get, I try to take a snapshot of the settings. A snapshot, if it's got a hard drive, I take an image. I do everything I can to capture the moment that I put it in the rack. And then let it rip, let it do its thing. And I will say that over the years, I have been fortunate enough to be able to call back those images, put the device back online, and start where I left off. So, my angst has been minimal. But I think preparation, pre-planning is handy. You get burned once, and then you realize it's important to take that time. Brand new Exciter out of the box. Oh, look, it's got a memory card. Might want to back that up first before I do anything else. Did I say an Exciter with a memory card? Wow, have things changed.
And by the way, if you, Chris, or me, or anyone else, if you attend Transmission Talk Tuesday from Nautel, go register. Go register at nautel.com/webinars, nautel.com/webinars. You can go ahead and register for all the webinars coming up in November, and you don't have to attend them, but go ahead and get registered. You'll get the email response. You'll get it put on your calendar, and then, hey, I get a little notification 10 minutes before it starts. I get a notification, hey, Nautel's Transmission Talk Tuesday is coming up in 10 minutes, and if I can attend it, hey, I'll even if I'm doing some cooking in the kitchen, I'll just bring it up on the phone and participate that way. It's a roundtable discussion. And that means that if you have an idea you'd like to share with other engineers, perfect format to do it. You just raise your hand on the app, and Jeff Weldon, if he's nice, he'll let you right in, and you can say your piece about what you have to do. You might give some really good advice that they hadn't thought of yet. Go to nautel.com/webinars. All right. Chris, our guest is Dave Doherty, and Dave, I didn't know Dave very well. We've met here a time or two, and Dave's been a fan of the show, so I appreciate that. But Dave and I spent almost an hour talking to each other earlier or last week, and my goodness, we just had a blast. I was earlier this week. We just had a blast catching up on all kinds of issues. And so we're going to catch up on that kind of stuff. Dave, why don't you give us the quick little elevator speech about Dave Doherty and the kind of work you do and the stuff that you're passionate about? What's Dave Doherty all about?
Well, professionally, I do a lot of FCC work, applications, improvements of facilities, all kinds of technical studies, allocations for new stations, for improvements for existing stations. Like we were saying the other day on the phone, I do a lot of stuff that other people really don't want to tackle because it's too hard or takes too long. And so that's what I like to do. I like the unusual stuff.
Well, I know it's a real pleasure both for you and for somebody who has a station license, for example, or wants to have a station license, to be able to, get that license, whether it's for a translator, an LPFM, or maybe a full power station, or just to be able to improve their facilities. And we're going to talk about some strategies that you help people with to upgrade facilities. We're also going to look at some interesting maps during the show today, and I think that'll be pretty cool. I want to talk what's on a lot of people's mind. I want to chat first about it's kind of an in the weeds topic, but I think it's important to understand the difference here. You and other engineers have talked to me about some acronyms at the FCC. One of those acronyms is CDBS, and the other one is LMS. And so we can all be on the same plate, the same table, same understanding. Tell me what those two things are. I got a feeling it's database, but I'm not quite sure.
That's exactly right. LMS is the licensing and management system. It went into play for TV several years ago. Last September 2019, it became the way to file radio applications as well. CDBS, Consolidated Database System, was the system that preceded it and is still being used for certain things like special temporary authorizations for emergency circumstances, things like that. But the CDBS started at 2000. Prior to that, they were using an old DEC VAX system, and there were some concerns about Y2K, so they pushed CDBS into service in 2000, and it wasn't really ready for prime time. And it took about 2 to 3 years to get it actually really functioning well. And by the time they were done with it, it actually was one of the more exemplary computer systems in the federal government. Why the switch to LMS for radio, I'm not sure, but it's a much different system. It's much more in line with the types of online things that you see at the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. Tower registrations, things like that are done on a system that's similar. It's quite a sea change from the user interface standpoint, and not as flexible as CDBS was in certain respects. But it seems like it's going along pretty well. The file formats, the download file formats for people like me are totally different, and that's really been a challenge because there's not a lot of documentation on that. But we're getting through it. And like I said, CDBS took 2 or 3 years. LMS is probably going to take the same.
For the average station owner or maybe station engineer who's not involved with licensing and stuff, is LMS something that a station owner, a station manager, or a station engineer, a local engineer, needs to understand how to deal with it in any way? Or is this something really best left to people like you and other professional, consulting type engineers?
Well, obviously it's mostly useful for consulting engineers and attorneys, who are most of the people who file these applications. But there are general managers and there are chief engineers who would file their own applications for one thing or another, and absolutely they should get to know it. If you want to do searches for stations, the old AM query, FM query, and TV query are still working. I'm not sure TV query and AM query are being updated, but FM query is, and it represents current information. It's the easiest way to get stuff out of the FCC. There's also Cavell Mertz's FCCinfo.com, which is a great source of that information. And of course, if you want the real deal, LMS is the licensing and management system. And if you want to know exactly what the FCC thinks your facility is set up as, then you go to LMS, you do a facility search or an application search, whichever is appropriate, and get the information there. I found a record just the other day. A client of mine in Worcester. It was an LPFM, and their construction permit says 100 watts horizontal and 100 watts vertical. And you go online and you look it up, and that's what it says in LMS in the online presentation. But somehow in the downloads, it came out as 100 watts horizontal and 100 kilowatts vertical.
Okay. That's a tough trick to do.
I think that guy would be very, very happy to be able to run a lot more power than 100 watts, but I don't think he could afford the power bill.
Well, I don't know what kind of antenna would actually give you that much of a ratio between vertical and horizontal.
It would be leakage.
Oh, yeah, I think you'd leak more than 100 watts into the horizontal. Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Cavell and Mertz thing, FCCinfo.com. That's it's a well-kept secret if you forget about it. Okay, a lot of people, it's a go-to thing. I remember it when I need to. Of course, Mr. Cavell has been on our show before, but I think this is a very handy way to look things up. And I guess, does FCCinfo.com, does that tie right into the LMS system at the FCC?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're downloading the databases on a daily basis and incorporating it.
Oh, they're okay.
Yeah,
So they're bringing the database into their own server and dealing with a copy of it that they just got, right?
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And Gary Cavell's a good guy. He's an old friend. We get along great.
Uh,
And they also have a really cool thing that is a plugin for Google Earth.
oh
So
yeah.
if you go on the fccinfo.com and get the plugin, now you got something that's really cool because you pop up Google Earth, select FM stations, and it shows you every FM station that's in the area that's displayed on the screen. Fabulous.
And it shows you graphically on Google Earth
Yeah.
all these stations. And it's great for STL Pass. Chris Tobin, I got to ask you. I've from that KML file. I think that's what it is that you download for Google Earth. It's a reasonable size download. You plug it in your Google Earth, and you can look at all at the the spatial results of all these things that are at the FCC. Chris, have you ever had a chance to download that and look at that with Google Earth?
Hang on. Yes. Yeah, I have. Actually, it's pretty handy. It's pretty cool and gets you some insight that you sometimes don't realize you could have used, and I like it. And, the trick is the database is being current. That's all. I've had a few lookups that have not been exactly on the margin, but it's okay.
I'm going to guess that if you get that KML file, you open Google Earth and you look at the Manhattan area and you look at, let's say, for example, broadcast STLs, you're going to find a high concentration of lines pointing at several buildings in Manhattan.
Yes. Yeah, the Empire State Building has a lot of lines going to and from. And it's
Yeah.
even funnier. There's lots of intercity relays that, I don't know if they call them that anymore, but there's a few of the groups here in town have links between their facilities. So, they go to studio to Empire out to transmit site backup to another studio location that's a backup. It's pretty funny when you start looking at the lines and like, wow, that's a lot of RF running around.
That's a good point.
These paths.
I'll bet before the days of convenient high bandwidth IP, we had much more microwave links. Like I guess you could have a New York station with links going to, let's say, Philadelphia, right?
Well, you could, yeah. There are actually a couple of New York stations that have links down in Philly for their sister station operations. But nowadays with the 23 gig, 11 gig, 5 gig, and all the different high microwave band linking, the antennas are beams like pencil thin. You can have 2 or 3 of them side by side pointing in three different directions. A couple of weeks ago I put up a 23 gig next to 4 other 23 gigs. They all looked like they were going in the same direction downtown, but if you took a pencil and expanded it out beyond the focal point of the dish, you'd notice, wow, they're way off, and by the time they get downtown, a mile away, it's definitely not next to each other. Years ago you couldn't do that with a Scala 950 antenna if you had 3 or 4 radio stations at a site trying to separate them. Didn't go very well.
Yeah. Hey, I want to ask Dave about, we mentioned the FCCinfo.com site. I'm wondering about a site that's really friendly to use for quick lookups and some coverage maps, and that is radio-locator.com. Dave, is that a site that's useful? Can you get reasonably accurate information there, do you think?
My experience has been that they tend to overstate the coverage. If you look up a station and you look at the overall picture that they show you is way beyond the protected contour for FMs. Okay. So you have to look a little closer in, and they do have. If I remember right, the last time I was there were 3 contours, and probably it's probably the city grade and the protected, and then something less.
They define them as local, distant, and fringe. So I don't know what that would. They do have contours to them. They're not just round circles like we used to draw with a 45 RPM record on a map. They actually do have. I guess it's what's filed with the FCC based on contours and azimuths and so forth.
Yeah, I don't know how they generate the contours themselves. I do mine using software that I developed, and just take the data from the FCC. If it's how much power they're running, what the antenna height is, then I bring in the terrain. If there's a directional antenna, I get that from the FCC. I'm not sure what they're doing.
I want to talk about that after our break, and that is the fact that the software that you use, and we're going to look at some of the output of that to look at allocations and where, if you want a radio station, In this show, we're going to show you where you can put one. And you get Dave to help you apply for it. And I'm not saying you'll get it, not saying you're going to cover anything more than tumbleweeds and sheep. But you can have a radio station, and and Dave will give you some ideas of where your stations can go. It's all coming up on This Week in Radio Tech. Dave's going to tell us about why he wrote his own software. I'll tell you why. It's because he was poor. So that's quite a story coming up on This Week in Radio Tech. And now we're going to tell you about something you can get absolutely free. It's amazing that you can get this free. It's available to you. Do you have a Telos phone system to put callers on the air? A lot of people do. A lot of people have the HX6 6-line system, or you might have a Telos VX phone system. Well, there is free software that lets you do call screening and actually use it to punch up calls on the air. It's from the folks at Broadcast Bionics. It's free for the light version, and that may be all you need. Let's see a little bit about X-Screen software from Bionics. We'll be right back.
X-Screen 2, the simply amazing new way to control, screen and log calls using your Telos HX6, IQ6 or VX talk show systems, helping you to get the best calls to air quickly and easily. X-Screen 2 is a powerful touchscreen interface that connects alongside your VSET 6 or VSET 12 handsets, and even enables you to screen directly on your PC using a USB headset or sound card. X-Screen 2 clearly displays the status of lines and hybrids, quickly captures caller details for screening, and automatically stores a log of calls and easily manages station and show directories of important numbers. There's also a scheduling clock and chat window for instant messaging and visual talkback to other X-Screen workstations on the system. As soon as a line rings, the caller's name is displayed, if they've rung before, and we can look up their location. X-Screen also usefully shows how many times they've called before and when they last called. You can add alerts to identify nuisance or persistent callers before you've even answered the call. To route a call to the VSET or headset, simply click on the handset symbol, exactly as you would use the button on the VSET. Using the other icon on the line, we can hold the call or route the call to a hybrid. Selecting an alternative device will change the icon key so you'll always know the destination of the call. The tabs on the right-hand side provide more information and control the selected caller. We can add this caller to a caller directory or create a manual entry for someone we call regularly. Calling someone is as simple as just clicking dial on their entry. A free version of X-Screen is included with your HX6, IQ6 and VX talkshow system. The full version of the software enables the caller database, directories and alerts and other cloud-based features. All Telos customers can try the full version for 3 months by downloading the free trial. More information is available by contacting Broadcast Bionics or your local dealer.
Thanks a lot, Broadcast Bionics, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And do remember that it's free. That X-Screen software is absolutely free to try the full version, and then it reverts after 90 days to the light version. And you can buy a license, or you can continue using it light. Thanks a lot again. Hey, we're talking to Dave Doherty. Dave is an FCC Consulting Engineer. He's helped a lot of people get translators, low power FMs, full power FM upgrades, move-ins, that kind of thing that we're going to talk about. Yep. One of the tools of the trade in this business is software, because the calculations that need to be done to produce maps, to give you a visual idea of where you can put something. Is it going to be worthwhile, or are you really going to be covering a lot of sheep, or dolphins? Then you need to know these kind of things. And Dave, you told me this story about writing your own software, and there's either one of 3 things going on, or maybe a combination. Either you, sir, are full of chutzpah, you were desperate, or you're a little crazy. So tell me about writing your own FCC allocation software. This is amazing.
Well, I started out drawing circles on maps, like you suggested. I happened to live in Virginia. This was many years ago. The USGS had a sales office in Alexandria, and they had really cool maps that were very cheap and very easy to use. And so I started with a compass, drawing. Okay, this has to be 150 miles from that, and so on. There were no databases available at that time. I started writing allocation software as a result. As I started to get into more and more complicated situations at that time, I realized that software was going to be required. I started writing it, and Then put it away for a while. I was doing other things. And then about 2005 or 2006, I decided to get back into it and took what I had started with years and years ago and started rewriting it. And that's where I am. I think I've probably got a couple 100,000 lines of code here somewhere, something like that. The advantage for me to doing it myself is that it's very, very easy for me if I find I have a conversation with somebody at the FCC and say, "Oh, I didn't know about that thing that you would allow." I can build that into my software.
Oh.
And so that's really the primary reason why I'm using my own software. But yeah, I mean, the software is expensive. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to make this stuff, and there's not a lot of users. And so the price is high.
If you don't mind, let's look at this first map that you created. This is a nationwide map of the frequency 88.1. So this is the very left-hand end of the of your radio dial. And if we can get a Suncast, it's going to bring that map up. What are we looking at here? What is this?
Okay, so that is for 88.1, every station in the United States on 88.1, 88.3, 88.5, and 88.7. So you're seeing
so the adjacent channels. Okay.
These are, yes, the co-channels and adjacent channels, the actual contours, which is what you use in the reserve band. So this would be inbound interference to a proposed location. So anything that's got anything that's white there is a place where you could potentially put a station. And you notice, for example, over there and on the left-hand side in Nevada, there's not much out there. I mean, there's plenty of space where you could put a station, but there's not a lot of people out there. So you have to zoom in on these areas and see if there's actually see if there's a city there that where you could put something. Very often you'll find something somewhere. If you want to go to the Montana maps that I did.
Tell you what, but before we move, let's go back to that map. I want to ask you about a small area. If there's white, that means you can put a station there, but it's going to have a contour that is going to overlap somebody else's red contour. But the way you've mapped this, that's okay to an extent, right? You're
in this case, because we're looking at inbound interference, your outgoing 60 dBu contour would not be able to overlap any of those colored areas, and they're colored. Yeah. They're colored red for co-channel and first adjacent, and they're yellow for second and third adjacent because the interference ratios flip at second and third adjacent, so you have to look at it differently. That's why they're color-coded differently. The blue ones are Canada and Mexico.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask a question about the map one more time. Chris Suncast, you can pop it back up there for a second. Up in Chris Tobin's part of the world, there ain't no room. Now, upstate New York has got a little bit of white there, but that's about it. Tennessee is also amazingly covered up, but there's a couple slivers of room in south central Tennessee, just to the southwest of Nashville, and also West Tennessee, northwest Tennessee, like around the Dyersburg area. So there's some white there. So if there's a sliver of white or a little triangle of white, does that imply that, given filing windows and all that, I might be able to fit something in there? Is that what this is saying?
Yeah. And there are small areas of white because of the scale of this map. This covers the entire country. There are small areas of white that you're not seeing here. And for that, we have to zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in.
So speaking of zooming in, then, go ahead.
Yeah, I can go down to a square 1 kilometer, and this is 6,000 kilometers, I think. So
and I've certainly heard of, hey, the tower will work on that side of the road, but you can't put it on the other side of the road. You're too close to the interference.
That absolutely does happen. We have a case in Rhode Island where we have 2 stations, both of which would like to get upgrades. And when you get it all said and done, the towers are 75 feet too close together.
Wow. Is a whole separate topic is directionalizing an FM to allow them to be closer together than they should be. Do you do that kind of work?
Sure. It's a basic tool. Yeah.
Huh. I will tell you what. Now, now's a good time as any. So if you if you're licensed for omnidirectional, plenty of people do a little bit of, I won't call it cheating. Let's say optimization of their signal. So there's your city of license, and you got to cover that. And then oftentimes there's another city that's your city of financial interest, where you really want to put a signal, even though you have to cover your city of license, right? In Hawaii, I'm part owner of an FM station. It's licensed to Hanapepe, and that's, almost nobody lives in Hanapepe, but that's where the license is. So we have to cover Hanapepe, but we really want to cover Lihue and Princeville. And so, so we had to pick a transmitter location that would cover Hanapepe, but we also want to cover Lihue. So how do you work with those constraints? Oh, well, I was going to get at, when you're omnidirectional, you have a little bit of freedom to optimize the signal. If you're directional, is it my understanding correct that you kind of lose that freedom? You have to do exactly what the map says that you're going to do.
Yeah, directional antenna patterns have to be measured by the manufacturer, either on a full-size mock-up of your tower, or they can do it to scale. Different manufacturers have different ways of doing that. But for a directional antenna, it has to be measured, and the measurements have got to be sent to the FCC before the station will be licensed. Non-directional, what they call non-directional, if you think about that, that's kind of a silly term because it means the signal goes nowhere.
Well, omnidirectional. Okay, there we go.
It's a bureaucratic term of art. You're either directional or you're not directional, and non-directional. Okay, goes back to the AM days. But anyway, they're not required to be measured, and so you can, by working with the antenna manufacturer. And I don't recommend you do this freelance, like, okay, if we put the antenna on that side of the tower, it's going to be better. And you really got to measure it if you want to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But they'll measure them on the same kind of range, and they'll give you the patterns that come out, and then you can choose where to mount your antenna. The difference is that it's not intentionally directional. There's no such thing as a truly omnidirectional antenna, with very, very rare exception. The antenna is affected. They're usually antennas are side mounted on towers, and the tower interacts with the antenna, with the signal, and directionalizes the signal. There's no getting around it. The only way you can get around it is to go on a pole and use something that's like a corkscrew type of thing. Forget what they call it. There's also a type of antenna called a Lindenblad that's very, very circular. But these things are mounted on the top of the tower on poles. And usually on big towers, what's on the top of the tower is a TV antenna.
Yeah.
So FMs pretty much have to go on the side.
Oftentimes the TV paid for the tower, or they paid the highest price to the tower owner to be there at the top of the tower. Okay, so but there are some red areas on a map like that where you could be in a red area if you directionalize and don't cause interference, or are you going to be accepting interference, or I'm way out of my league asking this question here.
It's really not going to help you much.
Okay. Well,
generally speaking, when you try to do that stuff, you hurt yourself more than you help yourself. You wind up with a deeper null in one direction and not a whole lot to gain in the other. The other way on a big tower, by the way, is to use panel antennas.
Yes.
Panels are very highly directional, and you take them and you put, if it's triangular tower, typically you're going to do 3 around. They call it 3 around, 3 panels at the same level. Sometimes I know that WBUR in Boston recently put up a 4 around panel on a triangular tower, which was quite a feat. There was a lot of mechanical work involved in doing that.
I can imagine.
But that gives you, that gives you a very, very well controlled signal. In their case, they're directional antenna. Here in Portland, we have several panel antennas, and they're on giant towers. And the effect of the panel and the tower is that you get some nulls in places that you really oftentimes don't want them. But panel antennas can be a very good solution if you have no choice but to mount on a big tower.
Coming up, well, we're talking to Dave Doherty, an FCC Consulting Engineer. He's helped a lot of stations to get upgrades to be in existence at all. We're talking about antennas right now, but we're also going to, after our break, we're going to talk about the non-commercial educational window for filing that's coming up in 2021. I know a lot of people are interested in hearing about that, and we're going to get Dave's perspective and understanding about some of the facts about that. So that is coming up. Chris Tobin, also, actually, before we take a break, Chris, I want to ask you, in your neck of the woods, in New York City area, I guess you do have quite a few panel antennas. Here in Nashville, I guess we got one that's kind of a panel antenna, but for the most part, FM stations are using, rototiller style or ring stub style on the side of either the tower or the side of a pole at the top of the tower. But you've got a lot of panel antennas where you are in the city.
Yeah, the FM's on Empire. Let's see, we're Empire, 4 Times Square, a few other places, there's panels up. Even the TV stations down, I think, at World Trade, those are actually panel-type designs that they have on there. It's circular around the mast. So, it's popular. And up here, there's a few directionals as well. And a lot of the FMs have sites off, outside the city, so they're directional coming in toward the city. And keeps things going, so yeah. But Dave's right, you definitely, when you're a directional station, do not just assume you can put something up on a tower and go for it. And even if you're a non-directional and circular and polarized, you should still make sure you optimize your antenna. Because I worked at a place, we had a side-mounted rototiller. It was a really nice antenna, worked very well. But we noticed a few areas that didn't seem to get the signal that they should. Did some field measurements and realized there was definitely a pattern alteration taking place. Contact the manufacturer, they did some math, did some work on a computer with the information on the tower we had. And they are like, yeah, you got a null in this direction, just so you know. This is the the radial. Take a drive, tell me what it sounds like. And sure enough, that signal dropped off, multipath noise, everything you could ask for. And it sort of lined up with the phone calls we were getting as well.
Oh, wow.
It's worth the expense. It's worth the investment to talk with a consultant who does it for a living. They see all these nuances of different designs, just like Dave talked about WBUR, directional. They had a reason for what they did. That's a Mike LeClaire station. So knowing Mike, he's definitely researched everything about it and wants to get the maximum he can out of his investment. So that's what you do. And at the end of the day, that investment should pay off.
So our show, This Week in Radio Tech, with Chris Tobin and Dave Doherty, FCC Consulting Engineer, is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcasters General Store. And bgs.cc is their website. You can get everything you need for your radio station and a lot of things for your TV station at bgs.cc. The people who work there are just amazing. I've known and done business with Broadcasters General Store for literally over 30 years now, probably 32 years or so. And Dave and Buck and Jessica and Carrie, everybody there, just awesome people. Hugh, just terrific people. One of the brands that they represent is Henry Engineering. Now, we've had Hank Landsberg on the show before, and if you've been in engineering for any length of time at all, you know about Hank Landsberg and the cool stuff that he makes. Just all kinds of products that you've probably used in broadcast, in like the Matchbox, multi-port, the Twin Match. Then they have like the Digimatch, the USB Matchbox. That's a cool device to get professional USB audio in and out. Small distribution amplifiers, the Talent Pod, the Sports Pod, the Sportscaster. All these things. We've talked about the Sportscaster quite a bit. Well, right now, people are interested in going to LED lights for tallies. And this box right here is built exactly to do that. It's this Henry Superlight. The Superlight does what the Super Relay did, but it does it on a scale that's appropriate for the low power consumption LEDs that we find both on-air lights outside the room, maybe on some lights that are embedded under the console, under the table, and those lights, those little ring lights that are on not an old mic arm like this one, but on the newer mic arms, you can get a ring of LED lights there to let you know, hey, my mic is on the air. Well, the Henry Superlight will help you get that done. It's just a terrific device. One thing that makes it terrific is the fact that it has this Control Link IO that works over Cat5 cable. And you can link a number of these. I forget if it's 4 or 8, but you can link a number of these in series, at least 4, because that's shown on the website. Studio A, Studio B, Studio C, Studio D. And you've got maybe you've got a GPIO node with your AOIP system, your Axia system or a competing one. And you've got your contact closures there. Well, you can just run a Cat5 cable and link it from one of these units to another, and you set little jumpers inside, and then you can control your on-air tally lights in each of your studios just from a single Cat5 cable that loops from unit to unit to unit. Or, of course, you can make it work with a single studio as well. It does come with the 12-volt DC wall transformer. It does have a relay output, double-pole, double-throw dry contacts rated for 24 volts DC at 1 amp. And it's just a cute little box. And if you build one of these up yourself, it's going to look ugly, because I've done that and it looked ugly. And I wish I had a Henry Superlight LED tally light controller available to me when I was building some new studios in American Samoa. Maybe we should go back and replace my lash up with these. That would be the smart thing to do. The relay outputs are available. If let's say that you have a console that doesn't mute the speakers, you can certainly use them to mute the speakers or run something else that does. Or you can drive an LED light directly off of this unit as well. So whether you power your LEDs externally or power them with the circuitry that's in here, the Henry Superlight is an easy way to go. And of course, that's not the only thing that Henry has these days. All kinds of cool products. Go to henryeng.com. henryeng.com the next time you need something to do a little job that can do it really reasonably and a lot neater than you can probably build up yourself, or that you have time to. My goodness. And you can get Henry products at Broadcasters General Store, bgs.cc. You can always give them a call. They're friendly folks. They answer the phone at 352-622-7700. I've got that number memorized. 352-622-7700 for Broadcasters General Store. Thanks a lot to everybody there. By the way, we're going to be broadcasting live, I believe, on November the 19th. Thursday, couple weeks from, is that 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks from now. We're going to be in Atlanta, Georgia, and Broadcasters General Store will be there. We'll be at the WSB AM transmitter site. And hey, Greg Dahl and his roving band of people going to be there with the next best thing in Atlanta. So we'll be there and look forward to broadcasting live from there. All right, we're talking to Dave Doherty, FCC Consulting Engineer, and we were getting ready to Dave to talk about this. We'll get to the maps. I want to see the other maps you got that are closer in. But the non-commercial educational NCE filing window. What is that about? What does that mean?
Well, the FCC announced that there will probably be a filing window in 2021. That will be the first one for general filings for non-commercial educational stations in the reserve band since 2007, so 13 years. Mm-hmm. The rules will be about the same. A couple of new things. In one of the tiebreakers will be for organizations that lost out in the last window and have not acquired a station. If the situation in a what they call an MX group, mutually exclusive applications that can't both be granted, or a group that can't be granted altogether. Right. One of the tiebreakers towards the end of that process will give a leg up to the people who applied in 2007 and did not get a station and did not acquire a station since. There's another new requirement, and this also applies to LPFM. That has to do with reasonable assurance that you have the right to use the tower location that you're proposing. This has always been in the rules. It's always been a requirement, but there have been a number of cases where people proposed towers that they didn't have any knowledge that they could use and got hung up by it. So the FCC will be requiring now reasonable assurance statement. I certify. Words to this effect: I certify that I have reasonable assurance to use the site I've proposed, and here is the name and contact information of the person who gave me that reasonable assurance. So wow, that's a big new thing, and I think that's probably coming for everything. But right now, it's going to be for the NCE window and for the LPFMs.
I haven't been involved with any, but I've had some competitors out there who said they had assurance of the tower site just through by dint of their filing, and right. They didn't. They had no hope. They had no place to put their and their transmitter like they said they would.
Yep.
And
I've seen it.
Let's see. Something that you told me happens when you get close to a filing window, there becomes a freeze on minor changes. Tell me why that is.
Okay, so there's no guarantee that that's going to happen this time, although based on past performance, I would expect it to happen. Normally, when they issue the public notice saying the dates of the windows, they will at the same time freeze minor change applications. And the point of that is to give people a stationary landscape against which to start creating proposals and to file their applications and hopefully to receive a grant. Typically, the minor change window lasts until some short time after the filing window is complete and the applications are in the download databases.
Okay. All right. Well, we have some maps to look at here. We got a series of them, and these are for channels 201 through 220. So that's 20 channels. This is at the lower
88.1 through 91.9. I had to think about that for a second. That's the reserve band. I tend to be a visual thinker. I like maps. I like what maps show me. It's much easier for me to relate to a map that shows me a place I can put a transmitter than it is to reams of spreadsheets. Although reams of spreadsheets are very, very useful, and I use them a lot when I'm trying to think of creative stuff that gets my brain engaged. It's the maps.
Let's start with channel 201. Suncast, if you could grab these in order, we'll take them. Okay, this looks like the output of your program. What is it?
Right. So this is the Montana section of the map. So we're zoomed in, instead of at 6,000 kilometers, we're zoomed into 1,000 kilometers. I set the coordinates, as you can see in the upper left corner, to 4720, 10945. That just happens to be somewhere near the center of Montana. And I created 20 maps, one for each channel in the reserve band. So you can see that there are some possible opportunities there, maybe down by Butte, possible there. And that's what you see. Okay, but if you're looking for something in Billings, this map is going to show you don't have it on 88.1.
Yeah.
So if we go to channel 202,
this would be 88.3.
That's 88.3. We don't have an opportunity in Billings, but we're close. And so you can continue to go through this. In the commercial band, when you're dealing with translators, which I do the same way, that's 80 channels, and that's real kind of overload to try and do 80 channels this way. But for the non-commercial reserve band, this is a very, very useful way of looking at the band.
Well, tell you what, let's kind of focus on the Billings area and shuffle through these maps. Let's look at 203.
Sure. Now we're in trouble again.
There. Yeah, a lot of red there. Let's go to 204. See if we got a chance there. Boy. All right. No, man. Billings is plenty of radio stations.
What you're seeing is pretty typical of populated areas. There's not a lot of real estate.
Okay. All right.
But if you're if you're a tribe or you're a college in a small town, maybe this would be of use to you.
What channel are we up to now? 210.
That's
210A.
210. Yep.
Yeah. No. If now this doesn't mean there's a station on every channel in Billings. It means that there's a co-channel or an adjacent channel in Billings, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And this also includes there are cases where you would be within the distance requirement from a commercial station that's 53 or 54 channels away.
Right.
The IF separation, 10.6 and 10.8.
That's right.
The reason we use channels is, I think it's pretty clear. It's so much easier to think in terms of channel 202 to 203 is first adjacent. To say that 88.3 to 88.5, we know it's first adjacent, but you have to think about it for a second. So that's why channels are being used.
And there's 220.
So there's nothing there for Billings, I'm afraid. So
all right.
That's what it's what I do. I do this almost every day.
But there certainly are areas. If you had a ranch, a small community somewhere in one of those wide areas, then you've got all kinds of possibilities.
Sure.
Maybe you've got a church organization or an Indian tribe, or it's just some kind of organization that you want to do a radio station, even if it's not heavily populated. Maybe you've got some other sources of income besides commercial. Well, of course, this is a non-commercial band anyway, so it's going to be funded by underwriting or another organization.
Yeah, one thing to be really clear about is that only not-for-profit organizations are eligible for this window. Individuals cannot apply.
Gotcha.
So you have to have an organization, and if you get in an MX group, one of the first things they look at is whether you have other stations, whether you have other applications, also how long you've been in the market or in the area, and your board has to be local. There's a whole series of legal requirements that have nothing to do with the stuff that I'm showing you on this map, and that's the province of FCC Consulting attorneys.
You, by the way, you had sent me a link to a video on YouTube called The New FCC Radio License Filing Window, What You Need to Know. And I noticed that one of the hosts on that webinar was Ernesto Aguilar. You know Ernesto?
I've not met him.
Okay.
He's the NFCB guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. He's actually been a guest on this show quite some time back. So anyway, it's about a little over a 1 hour thing. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. So if people are interested in that, they can get the information from the National Federation of Community Broadcasters? NFCB?
I think so. Yeah. And the attorneys are very, very good. I've known Frank Montero for many years, and it was a very good presentation. I thought I was very impressed.
So for commercial broadcasters, translators have really been popular in the last few years. I know myself and my business partners, we have a couple of translators. Talk to me about the translator business. And I know there's not a window coming up for commercial translators, but tell me how that's going. And if people think, hey, I want to see if I can get another channel on the air in the city, maybe feed it through an HD2 channel, right? What do people need to do to even see if there's a possibility of a translator channel in their city?
Well, new translators can only be proposed during filing windows, similar to the one that's coming up for NCE. So the FCC has said there'll be a non-commercial educational or NCE window coming up, followed by an LPFM window. Presumably that'll be filed by a translator window. Who knows? Maybe in 2022 or 2023. If you don't have a translator and there's not one in the area that you can move in, you're basically out of luck until they open a window.
What about moving existing translators? I know the company I'm part of that owns some radio stations, we've done that. How does that work?
Well, for AM stations, there was a pair of one-time filing windows that would allow you to move a translator up to 250 miles. But that was a one-time shot that's over and done. Now, if you want to move a translator, the 60 dBu translators don't have protected contours like full service stations because they're subject to interference. Right. But the 60 dBu contour, the 1 millivolt contour, where you're proposing to put it, you have to have overlap with the current 60 dBu contour. And there were people who were moving translators 10 or 15 times, and the FCC finally put the kibosh on that a long time ago. And so you probably get away with moving twice, maybe.
So this is if you want to move it, let's say 40 miles from, there's a translator in that town. It'll also work in this town, but it's not licensed in this town. I want to get it, buy it, whatever, and I want to get it relicensed so I can have it in my town. That's where this multi-step move comes in, and that's where the FCC has said, no, we're not doing 15 steps.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
There are rare cases where a translator might be able to be moved 40 miles. If the current translator or the proposed site is, on Sandia Crest in, Albuquerque or some other very, very high site, translators can have enormous coverage. But for most translators with 250 watt limitation, or in some cases a 99 watt limitation, or even less, you've got you're not going to be able to cover the world, and you're not going to be able to move it very far either.
But that is something that you consult with people on, moving their
Absolutely.
translators.
Sure.
I think you may have had a little story here about the call sign ID rule, and you do advise stations on legality of various practices, not just getting them an upgrade or a move in or a translator, but people come to you with all kinds of questions, don't they?
Yeah. I got one the other day. Are we doing this ID right? And I thought about it and said, well, yeah, it seems right. It's rule compliant. But it turned out when I dug into it a little bit, it complied with the rule, except that the name, it's an LMA situation, and they're mentioning the station owner's name as part of the ID, which you can do. So it was the rule states that the call sign and the city of license have to be right adjacent to each other, with a couple of exceptions. You can put in the frequency. You can put in your network affiliation if you're affiliated with a network, and you can put in the licensee, quote, as stated on the station license.
Okay.
So they were doing this announcement, and so university, city of license. But when I dug into it a little bit, and this is why attention to detail is kind of important, the station was not licensed to so-and-so university, it was licensed to so-and-so college, which they were before they became a university.
They were a college, became a university, but the licensee name on the license is still college.
Did not change. So colleges spend an enormous amount of effort becoming a university.
Right.
So we didn't feel good about saying so-and-so college, and then the city of license. So we just rearranged it. But it's one of those fun things that comes up once in a while. You just never know what you're going to come in. Every day in this business is different, and almost every day, there's something new to learn, which is why I love
it. There's always been that joke about the time station WWV, right? And so how the announcer WWV, it'd be funny if they would do the ID this way. This is WWV, Fort Collins, Denver.
Yeah. Well, you are allowed,
the action. Yeah.
Your city of license has to be adjacent to the call sign, but then after that, anything goes. Yeah.
I worked at back in the day. I worked at an easy listening station at WEZI, and I don't know why they didn't want to be associated with their city of license, which was Germantown, Tennessee, which was the highfalutin muckety muck area, right? When you said the name Germantown, you had to pronounce it Germantown. But they wanted to be associated with Memphis, so the ID, was always WEZI FM Germantown, Memphis, and of course that's legal, but they wanted to emphasize the Memphis.
Yeah.
So, wow. Chris Tobin has been standing by and as usual so politely and Chris, I wonder if you might have something to add or a question for Dave before we break and take look forward to our tips of the week coming up next.
Sure.
Chris, go ahead.
Actually, one question I do have is we have a few of them here in this area. The FM stations that are operating on TV6, what's the latest on that? I'm not going to use the other term that people like to call them, but it's
That's a term that came to mind. Well, theoretically, the sunset for analog low-power TV is coming up next year, and if they stick with that, that would be the end of them. There's a lot of lobbying going on to keep them alive in some fashion. I have no idea where that's going. I'm not involved in that at all.
Okay, I was just curious. I know a few people that are operate as such, and it's been interesting conversation, so I just thought I'd ask. Since you're in the thick of it more than I am, so you may have heard things or just, okay, next year, that's it. Sunset happens.
Well, we don't know for sure. That's the current plan, but plans change, so.
Sure.
I take it whatever Chris didn't want to say was, I'll say it. Well, I'll say the quiet part out loud. Is that a Franken FM?
Yes.
That's
I'm only kidding around. I've said that in meetings and people get all upset. I'm like, what are you getting upset about? It's just a phrase. Come on, you know what it means. I'm not insulting you, for heaven's sakes. But yeah, it's just funny how people call it that and they just get real crazy. It's like, all right, fine. There's a story behind it. You read the story. It's a great movie. What can I tell you?
First time I heard one of those things, I was driving down the Merritt Parkway in Connecticut, and I don't know how I happened to do it, but I happened to hit on 87.7, and there's this signal, and I think they were speaking Russian, and channel 6, I didn't know there was an LP6 in New York City, but that's what I was listening to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. That's changed hands several times. I've actually helped maintain the transmitter over the years. So, yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Well, I was telling folks for a long time there was a Franken FM in Philadelphia. They said, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, WPVI, TV6. I drive up the turnpike for years. I used to listen to them all the time. And everyone's like, oh, yeah. Oh, okay. It throws people off completely.
Hey, it's This Week in Radio Tech, our 517th episode. We're talking with Dave Doherty, an FCC Consulting Engineer. I'm Kirk Harnack, along with Chris Tobin, who is high above Manhattan. We're going to have a tip of the week coming up in just a minute. I'm not sure Dave knows about this. Dave, I hope you've saved the best for last. We're going to look for a tip, something that our listeners and viewers can walk away with and maybe even put to use in the next week or two. Maybe it's a website, a tool, maybe it's your phone number or a website. I don't know, but some kind of good tip to leave people with. Here's my tip for you from Angry Audio, and that is this amazing little box called the Bluetooth Audio Gadget. The Bluetooth Audio Gadget, this goes in your studio, and if a lot of you are broadcasting from home, maybe you're doing podcasts, maybe you're an engineer responsible for helping other people get set up for their podcasts, this box will really help you out. You want to do the occasional telephone interview, and you don't want to pay for a POTS line and a telephone hybrid, or you don't, hey, the Telos VX is a great piece of gear, but if you're going to use it, once a week on one phone line, it's probably not what you need. This is what you need. Use this, link it up with your cell phone with a little pairing switch right there, and this will put your cell phone audio into your audio console, and from your console, feed mix minus audio back to your phone caller. The Bluetooth Audio Gadget, it's got analog and digital I/O on it, and it just works well. You can use it for phone calls, but you can also play audio from your phone to your audio console, and that works really well too. In stereo, high quality audio via the Bluetooth. It's got a couple different modes it works in, and it figures that out automatically what you need. Folks are loving this, and it is priced a little lower than you might expect, especially for a nice heavy box that's got the power supply built into it. It plugs in the wall, and I can highly recommend this because so many other engineers have. They've told me that they really like it. You want to get one? You go to angryaudio.com. You can read all about it, and then go to your favorite broadcast equipment dealer and get you a Bluetooth audio gadget from Angry Audio. While you're thinking about equipping your studio with the latest stuff that works well, think about this. From Max Connect Wireless, this is the Max Connect Wireless service, and it can come in a Cradle Point 4G LTE modem. It can come in a PepWave 4G LTE modem. There's other ones as well. Talk to the folks at Max Connect Wireless about which device maybe what you need, but what this gives you a fixed static IP address, IP connectivity, about 5 megabits per second up and down, and it's reliable. If you put a MiFi or something like that at a transmitter site, you don't know what your IP address is going to be. It's going to change. That's the way mobile networks work, and you're not guaranteed any kind of bandwidth on that. But with Max Connect Wireless, you get priority over every other user except for first responders. So even if you're at a stadium doing a ball game and there's, well, okay, I know it's COVID time, but let's say the stadium is 25% full of people and they're all on their cell phones and they're overloading the capacity of the nearest cell towers, this will get you through because it's your own channels. You're not sharing bandwidth with other people. This is what you want from Max Connect Wireless. Put this at the transmitter site for remote control, for emergency audio being fed to the transmitter site, or take it with you out on remotes, whether it's a sporting event or a big downtown thing, or, hey, maybe it's a riot. Maybe you're going to go cover the riot. Well, you get bandwidth that nobody else gets with Max Connect Wireless. Go to their website and check them out at maxconnectwireless.com. If you've got a favorite carrier you like to deal with, well, Max Connect Wireless has deals with AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile, so you get your own high priority and private APNs with which to connect, to connect to. So check it out from maxconnectwireless.com. We use it when we're out on the road. We love it, and it works well. All right, time for our tip of the week. Dave Doherty, can I put you on the spot? Do you have a tip to leave our viewers and listeners with, something about what you're passionate about?
Well, I think the one thing I can say is take the time to go back and check through your FCC records, make sure everything's in order. If you haven't done that, or you don't have the capacity to do that, have somebody do it, an attorney, or I can do it. There's been a number of cases where just minor details in the documentation have strung people up for thousands of dollars of fines. Things like building a tower, getting the authority to build a tower, building the tower, and then not telling the FCC you built it. That's worth a fine. And there's a lot of those cases out there. I find them all the time. So pay attention to the paperwork. Get an ABIP inspection. All the state broadcasters have what they call alternative broadcast inspector program, where an outside expert comes into your station, reviews your technical operations, reviews your logs, reviews your licenses, reviews your website. One thing that I haven't found very many people who know about this, but effective last Friday, you need to have a link on the home page of your website to a single page, a specific page, that lists all your outstanding applications with the FCC. And if you don't have any, you need to have a statement that says you don't have any. That's the way the rule reads. Most people are going to fill that out and say we don't have any, because most people aren't doing much in the way of applications these days. But this replaces the newspaper public notice requirement. That's gone by the wayside for the most part, I think. But this is a new requirement. If you don't have that link on your website and the FCC checks your website, you could be in trouble. So do that.
I wonder if you're a company like Delta Radio, my company, and we have about 10 radio stations within Delta Radio. We have a master website. I wonder if we could say it on there, or do we have to put this notice on every single one of our call letters websites? Don't know.
I'd have to look at the rule. I don't know the answer to that. I think you're required to place. Where do you place your links to the FCC public files? Is that on the individual stations?
I don't know. I'll find out, because I don't handle that, but my business partner does. But that may be a good way to decide that.
I think it would be worth getting hold of a copy of the rule and seeing what it says. I think it's required to be specifically on each station, but I don't know the answer to that.
Good deal. Well, all right, good. And even if you don't have an application, you got to have a statement saying we have no pending applications for the FCC. Chris, we got to run pretty soon. Chris Tobin, you got anything as a tip of the week for us?
Well, real quick tip of the week, because I've been running into this a lot with folks. If you're doing a lot of off-site remote connections, right, whether it's video or whether it's audio only, consider making sure that the equipment you're using back at the studio or wherever the collection point is, it's dedicated to that purpose. I say this because we're doing a lot of stuff with Zoom video conferencing, and I've dedicated 3 computers just to that purpose. And it's eliminated all the hiccups that we've been running into for months. So I would just suggest that, because I've been watching a few videos of the stations, noticing a few things. I'm like, oh yeah, I just heard a sound that's a Windows sound. I guess that computer's doing more than just that particular video and audio. It's well worth looking into. It saves me a lot of headaches and overnight calls, and I've got folks all around the city and actually across the country participating and producing content, and I don't get a phone call. I'm happy.
Good deal. Good tip. And yes, that's good advice, because if if different people are using it for different functions and it's being used on the air for a Zoom meeting, you don't know what state they left things in. They may have muted the speaker. They may have changed the audio settings, and that would be disastrous if you're using something for an on the air feed for one of these conferencing systems. So, wow. Hey, our time is up. Thank you so much, Dave Doherty, for joining us. I really appreciate you coming to us from Portland, Oregon. Great advice. We'll have some links up to your company, to your LinkedIn, and also the advice that you gave. I guess I had one little thing we mentioned it, and I'll put a link in the show notes about the KML file that Dave mentioned. It's on the Cavell Mertz website. Actually, it's on the FCCinfo.com website, but I'll put a link to that. You can download this file and open it up in Google Earth and see all these all these transmitter sites and STL links and all kinds of things drawn out on maps. Wherever you live in the U.S., anywhere, wherever the FCC has jurisdiction, you'll see that kind of stuff. Chris Tobin, thank you for being with us as well. I appreciate it. And we got to go. We want to give a big thanks to Suncast, the producer of our show, for keeping up with all the maps and showing all those on a timely basis. And of course, thanks to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network. Tell your friends about This Week in Radio Tech. I'd appreciate it. We'll have a great show next week. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be live from the WSB transmitter site in Atlanta, Georgia. At least that's the plan. Wish us luck. Godspeed. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.